We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Rick, I had to get your opinion on this because this was obviously big news if you're following sort of the global media and global press, which was the BBC had sort of a mass exodus, if you will, after being caught editing deceptively their coverage of President Trump. And we saw this. It's really egregious when you watch it because, so much so that you have had most of the leadership resign or leave. And then on the other side of the British media, who exactly are not the best friends of President Trump, have actually said, you know what? This is ridiculous. They should have consequences here. That's not the way we do it here. And honestly, in the UK, it's a much different world in the way that they have laws in terms of the way libel can be treated, and those things can be treated much differently than America, where, the news can kind of get away with anything. And I'm not saying that we should have what they have, but this is kind of shocking coming from the UK to say, not only did wrong, but we got a clean house.
I think they're scrambling because they're about to be sued. Yeah. This was so egregious. I really encourage people to watch it. This is an easy acknowledgement that the BBC was out to get President Trump. The reason why I love this moment and the fact that the BBC is caught is because they've been doing it for years. We finally have the perfect example to show their bias, but make no mistake, their bias has been legendary, egregious, outrageous for years. And yet now we have the perfect example. I think CNN International should take note of this as well, because when you travel internationally and you are forced in a hotel to watch CNN International as one of the only English language news sources, you immediately see just how outrageous it is for CNN International to cover President Trump or Republicans or even America. It is such an America-hating entity. And so I'm so excited that we have now this perfect example to go after the BBC and to highlight to Brits and to Europeans and to the rest of the world just how biased the coverage has been at the BBC for decades.
Rick, many times we would read the coverage of an event in America as we're going through our prep and read just even the lead paragraph of a BBC article, and the way things were just framed, it felt like a tabloid, not this boring, dusty old news organization that the BBC has become in many ways, but it would read like a tabloid. It's like, how did you get that take on supposed to be just normal news coverage, but that was your lead? So once again, I just echo that yeah, it's kind of a long time coming on this, but you do mention CNN International, and what BBC did here isn't all that much different than we've seen from a lot of American news organizations, and in some ways a lot worse. Thinking about Russiagate coverage and how it was the gospel truth, and they would put on people that were members of the deep state, if you will, that would tell us this is the truth. And Adam Schiff, I have irrefutable proof of collusion, and never using journalistic standards, having someone on to debate that or to give the counterpoint or to say, where is the proof? Or the journalists themselves never asked, well, can you show it to me? I think that hopefully there will be lessons learned. Now, obviously, the way that you can sue in the UK is a lot different than even here. But I think should the American media maybe be learning a lesson, I hate to say it, from the British media in a time like this?
Well, I think President Trump would agree with you because he's sued some of these media organizations for their egregious errors, for their bias, for their inability to tell the truth. I'm thinking of CBS. The president, because of 60 Minutes and what they did on the Kamala tape, protecting her, making her seem like she was articulate when she wasn't, they got caught. And the president went after them. He's done that with a couple of outlets, and Kash Patel has done that. I like it. I think that there should be consequences for these news organizations because they're no longer news organizations. They're now business entities, which is okay, but they need to own it. They need to own the fact that they're not telling both sides of the story or trying to be legitimately news organizations, that they have a point of view and they're going to view all news stories with that point of view. I look at what happened this past weekend with ABC's weekend program, George Stephanopoulos trying to frame issues that were just so outrageous, and our Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, called him out on it. And this is a moment where I think we all have to push back against these guys. George Stephanopoulos was an activist Democrat in a Democrat White House. ABC Disney, remember, Disney owns ABC. They decide to hire this partisan and pretend that he is going to deliver regular, straight news. We all know that George Stephanopoulos is cheering for the Democrats. In every single story that he frames and every interview that he does, he's clearly a partisan looking to score points for the Democrats against Republicans. And the fact that Disney has hired him, keeps him on, and ignores the criticism is beginning to be a problem for Disney. I think that this was a problem years ago, but now when you have the Treasury Secretary and other cabinet officials raising this in interviews, I think the pressure is going to mount on Disney that you can't pretend that George Stephanopoulos is just an unbiased news reporter. You have to recognize that he is a Democrat absolutely trying to score points for the Democrats.
Well, and there is hope as well as you see what's happening at CBS and you see what Bari Weiss, as the editor of the news division, is doing. Now, people that have been in news for a long time at CBS, because they've gotten used to this post-truth media world, they're upset because why? They're going to have journalistic standards again. They're going to make them report and be antagonistic to both sides. You know what? That is the role of the media. I'm completely fine with an aggressive, antagonistic press if they're doing their job and not trying to tip the scales in one way or the other. But when you see what's happening at CBS, and honestly, a lot of jobs are opening up for young people that want to do this job the right way.
Even in the BBC.
And exactly. So I think there is, while it may not be the head of the BBC or the head of that equivalent here resigning in the same way, I think there is a movement where pushing past this post-truth media era where you'd have people like George Stephanopoulos get on there and try to act like he is the most serious newsman in the world when we know what he's done. We've seen what he's done even on coverage of ACLJ issues and things where, getting caught saying, get him off air, get him off air.
Amazon during the impeachment, they accidentally cut from my dad to George Stephanopoulos a little too early.
Because he was making too good of a point.
He was making essentially the kill sign on air.
That the actions alleged and the actions of the president do not reach that level, no matter which school of thought you're on. And we're not afraid to put out both of those schools of thought, because our position is you still have to meet basic, fundamental constitutional obligations, and they haven't. Next.
How much work do you think you have to convince?
I'm sorry.
How much more work do you think you have ahead to try and convince that room?
And that is Jay Sekulow right there.
And it aired, and it became a big moment. And it's a moment we replay a lot here because it's just again, funny moment, a showing of the bias here. But look, as Will said, CBS is responding. Disney, unlike this, has started to respond. A lot of them have started to respond. The media is not, they understand what they're dealing with right now. And you're right. I think there will be some accountability that's going to come into play over the next year. I think heading into midterms, you're going to have to see some of that as well. Because it is now beyond just playing to their base. It now has to be, again, playing to the whole country, of which we thought is what's happened with late night programming. It's what's happened with a lot of these things. Now, ABC, obviously, they got their own flack for everything that happened during the Jimmy Kimmel situation, and they've had to kind of backpedal, go back and forth on that. But they know where their audience actually is. They know who's really watching.
Look, as you're talking about these issues, it's just, I can't help but think, and maybe this is selfish, but it's probably because I'm in the fight now. I can't help but think about what we're doing in culture and here at the Kennedy Center, because what President Trump gave us was the ability to fix things unapologetically go in and try to understand the problems, find solutions regardless of the criticism. And while we're getting a lot of criticism, I can't tell you how excited we are to take on the culture and to bring back a arts institution that is free of politics.
I love it.
But when what that means is when you're removing the politics on the left thinks somehow that you're manipulating the process. All we're trying to do is clean it up by saying you can't be political anymore.
Rick, I thought your influence was showing pretty strong. This weekend was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I watched the ceremony, and there was almost no reference to politics the entire night, coming from a lot of people who have been not so friendly to you and to the Trump administration. So to see that, I go, oh, they're even waking up a little bit going, they knew who their audience is.